The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It is not only one of my favorite Bill Parcells quotes, it is also the title of a terrific book written by Jerry Eisenberg about 30 years ago, titled No Medals for Trying. And yes, last night, or this morning really, because it ended after midnight, was a loss for the Commanders. There's no way around that. But that old cliche of losing the locker room, that clearly hasn't happened with Dan Quinn. And you see what a difference Terry McLaurin makes. Huge in that game. The defense played better. They just lost to a better team by one play. And without a terrific tip pass by Nick Bonito, linebacker for the Broncos, we might be sitting here talking about an enormous upset last night and the chance for 2 in a row next week at Minnesota. They're actually favored by 1.5. I'll get more into that. The Vikings played a quarterback who clearly wasn't ready to play yesterday against Seattle. And we don't know about J.J. McCarthy. He's expected to be cleared from concussion protocol, but not a certain thing. But anyway, we would be looking at this like, oh, yeah, I know the chances are slim, but remember last year they went undefeated in December and yeah, but all that. But at least there's some life in this football team. And Barry's Verluga's got a column today about the great catch that was made last night by Treylon Burks, Treylon Odell Burks, as I call him. And they went right to that on the Sunday night game last night, showing the Odell Beckham catch on Sunday Night Football against Dallas. I believe that was 11 years ago. Wow. But, yeah, it was very, very similar to that, the one-handed catch that he made. And, you know, Burks is probably typical of what they're looking for now. They're looking for players for next year. And Burks may be that type of find. It didn't work out for him in his last stop, but that doesn't mean it won't work out here. He's big, which is hard to find in a wide receiver, and obviously he's got hands, or as we saw last night, hand. But, you know, it did come down to that final play, and there was no question that Washington had to go for it there on the two-point conversion rather than kick. In addition to having a new snapper and a new kicker, extra points these days are not 100%. So even with that, but the thought that they would continue overtime with an extra point and give the ball back to Denver, where neither team was able to stop the other at that point. They were dog tired. Do you know how many snaps Washington had last night? Like a typical game, a team will have usually between 60 and 70 snaps. They had 85 last night, 85 snaps, including overtime. But Denver, even including overtime, only had 69. So they were beat physically, emotionally, all that. You go for it there. There's no second guessing on that. And they had Jeremy McNichol wide open in the flat. Great play call. Just that the blitz was a little bit too much. And on top of everything else, I mean, there's so many stats to throw into this. But realize this, the Broncos, and I don't know exactly how they calculate this, but we have so many ways of looking into advanced stats these days. But from a pressure standpoint, they were number one in the league at 41%. Don't ask me how they come up with that number, but they were number one at 41%. Last night, the Broncos were 17.9%. That's their lowest pressure rate since they gave up 70 points to Miami 2 years ago. So that ought to tell you something there. The offensive line did a very good job, and the one player that they needed to stop, Bonito, at the end of the game, weren't able to stop him, and he was able to knock away the Marcus Mariota pass before he was able to put it into the hands of a wide-open Jeremy McNichol, and they walk off with a win. But that's not the way it worked out. Dan Quinn, after the game.
You know, coming off the field, it just felt those are games you do love to be a part of. The absolute battle, two teams like going for it, throwing punches back and forth, and you know, I hate the outcome, you know, but I love the fight. It's been tough as hell, you know, for a while, and I thought our guys played hard as hell.
As for going for two, the question, you know, was there any hesitation on that? Absolutely not.
Into the overtime spot, I thought that would be the way that we would go. I kind of think of that as like a third possession in a way, David, to say if you get on D and you go, you can tie or you can go, and like that's the way. If you tie, you got to stop and get it back again. So that was the strategy all along. And honestly, it was a play that we liked. We got it batted down, but against a man-to-man, that's one that we practiced a lot and we liked it. And so, I hate the outcome, but there was no hesitation. No, I knew before the drive started, hey, we're going to score and we're going to go for 2. Then you're in all 4 down territory, so it's more strategy in that way.
And the view from Marcus Mariota, who threw the pass.
I loved it. I don't think there was any doubt in our minds across the board. And appreciate the confidence from Q. And, it was just unfortunate we weren't able to convert.
Yeah, they were 3 for 3 on 4th down. The aggressiveness that they've shown since Dan Quinn got here was there last night, and they were mostly successful. In fact, all the stats from last night's game are relatively even. Total yards, Washington 419, Denver 402. Both teams good on 3rd downs. Washington 8 for 17, Denver 7 for 15. Penalties, not a factor, and they have been a factor all year for Washington. That really wasn't that big a deal, although there was some really questionable officiating at the end of the game, which didn't cost them the game, but it's ridiculous, some of these calls that are made, and clearly their knowledge of the game isn't what it should be. And people have been pounding the drum for years. Full-time officials. Well, maybe I'm starting to come around on that because their lack of knowledge on some of this stuff was really appalling. 5 penalties, 35 yards, Washington, 533 for Denver. Passing yardage, a little bit more in favor of Denver, 315, and Washington ran the ball for 143 yards, and that was by design. Dan Quinn talked about that after the game, that they did want to run the ball against this team, which has this tremendous pressure. They, again, doing a great job protecting Marcus Mariota and keeping the pressure rate for a team that had been 41% to 17.9%. Really stupid interception by Marcus Mariota, but he made some great plays last night. He really did. It was 50 passes, 28 for 50, 294 yards. Bo Nix, again, similar numbers, 29 for 45, 321, a touchdown, and an interception. Bobby Wagner got one. Haven't had many turnovers this year. Wagner had actually a really good game. He had 8 tackles in the interception, but again, the reason that I believe that he's not going to be here next year, because one of the key plays for Denver in overtime with the go-ahead touchdown is they isolated him one-on-one with a running back in a pass, and he just doesn't perform that well in that situation anymore. Just doesn't have the speed to do it. But 143 yards rushing for Washington, very key in keeping them in the game. The leading rusher, Mariota, 10 carries for 55 yards. You don't lose that much when you don't have Jaden Daniels. No, he's not as explosive as Daniels, but he will run the football. I think he's the perfect backup for Daniels, and I would expect him to be back here next year. This is a great situation for him. Zach Ertz, yes, he was their leading receiver, 10 catches for 106 yards. But he had a couple of drops. One of them was knocked out of his hands. Okay, I'll give you that. But the other one was a flat-out drop. And he's had more of those. He's had more false starts. He's 36 years old. I got to believe this is the last year for him here. But they did rely on him heavily last night, and overall he did produce with the 10 catches. But what we saw from Terry McLaurin, and this is such a damn that he's missed so much time this year. And, maybe the record wouldn't be incredibly better than it is right now, but you see what he does. The quarterback knows exactly where he's going to be. He runs precise routes. He is great at these 50-50 balls, as they call them. When they throw it up in the air, he could go get it. And 7 catches for 96 yards in his first time playing in, 3-4 weeks here? And he was supposedly on a pitch count. They blew past that because he was on the field an awful lot last night. He missed a few plays here and there. And Debo had a very solid game, 5 catches for 64 yards. But, again, it always comes down to, in these games, these close games, it comes down to one play. As Vince Lombardi used to say, he said, every football game is decided by 3 or 4 plays. Since we don't know what those 3 or 4 plays are, we're going to play them all as hard as we possibly can. And it was, in fact, this last 2-point conversion attempt, which, decided the game. It was going to go one way or another, depending on what happened. Tim Hasselbeck played here briefly in 2003, shows up in the studio with Scott Van Pelt every Sunday night to analyze games, and this was his look at the final play.
You're in man coverage. You're not afraid to play it down there, and you're also not afraid to bring pressure down there. You just got to trust that your guys get home. They did a pretty good job of that most of the night.
And I say it so often, I get sick of hearing me say it, but you got to win the coin flip games in this league. And this literally, as you just diagrammed, comes down to the difference between winning and losing was one play. And Denver bringing, arguably, Surtain was the defensive player of the year, but Benito is as valuable a player as they've got on that side of the ball. That's why they win the football game.
It is, and it's also, you get the opportunity to play a team that has the opportunity to tie the game with time left, and they say, no, you know what?
3-8.
Exactly. But what happens if it's a team that's, in a different fight in terms of in the playoffs? Like, are they as aggressive in that spot? Like, do you do that? I'm not sure you do.
Ties are pretty valuable. Just ask Green Bay, right? I mean, if you end up in a tiebreaker scenario, that tie can be a huge differentiator. But just in terms of what has most impressed you, body of work on who this 10-2 Denver team is, I feel like we do dissect and nitpick because I think there are things to nitpick about them. But at some point, you're 10-2. Enough nitpicking.
So we talk about
me to myself here.
No, but winning close games. You and I talked about that.
Right.
As we're watching the game. Details matter. Like everyone's coaches say, it's a game of inches.
Yep.
It's because details matter. Good coach teams are good on the detail.
Yeah, and it is that final details of that final play which makes the difference. If somehow Benito is blocked, the pass gets into the hands of Jeremy McNichols, and Washington walks off with a win. And it's a whole lot different. Now, the point that Scott made about if you're in a different situation where you're trying to get into the playoffs, maybe you are playing for a tie or worst case scenario for a tie. Now, kicking the extra point at that point, because I think there were like 3 minutes plus left in overtime, that wouldn't have done any good because Denver would have gotten down the field and kicked the field goal. But there's also this in attempting an extra point, which, since they moved it back, is, not as automatic as it used to be. I don't know what the overall numbers are, but you see extra points missed every week now. You never used to see that. And they had a new kicker yesterday, as you know, Jake Moody, because Matt Gay got cut. Matt Gay, by the way, was kicking in San Francisco earlier in the day. Jake Moody comes in, and he did his job. He kicked the field goal to send it into overtime. But he's new. And on top of that, Tyler Ott, who's been a dependable snapper for the last year and a half, or almost 2 years. He was sick, didn't play. They brought in Zach Triner. And Nikki Javala tweeted out before the game all the snappers and the kickers that have been here since 2014. And let me see if I can do this John Washita style as quickly as I can. Snappers: Nick Sundberg, Rick Lovato, Andrew East, Cameron Cheeseman, Tucker Addington, Tyler Ott, Zach Triner. That's the snappers. And snappers sometimes can play for a team like 15 years and nobody knows who they are because if they do their jobs, they don't botch a snap and nobody knows anything about them. But that's just the snappers that they've had since 2014. I'm going to need a big breath for the kickers. Here we go. Kai Forbath, Dustin Hopkins, Kari Welch, Brett Maher, Eddie Pinero, Luim Hulalamo, I didn't pronounce that one, Brian Johnson, Chris Blewett, Joey Sly, Greg Joseph, Brandon McManus, Ramiz Ahmed, Riley Patterson, Cade York, Austin Siebert, Zane Gonzalez, Matt Gay, Matthew Wright, Jake Moody. Whew. Those are the kickers. Yeah, those are the ones. So, that's another factor in all this. You got new people. Here's something else. A couple of quick other things from the Broncos side of it. This is Patrick Surtain. Patrick Surtain is maybe the best in the business. And realize that most of the damage that Terry McLaurin did, he did it against Patrick Surtain. And Surtain was huge in the secondary for them. And maybe gave a little bit more credit to the pass rush than he should have.
All those guys, they're tenacious. They're going to get after the quarterback. And it's like it's a clock ticking in our head. One Mississippi, two Mississippi. They're probably there already. If not, we know they're going to get there because pressure is key in this league. As you can see, man, it affects a lot of, opposing offenses when you got great pressure. And to, counterpart with that, we got to have great secondary play as well, too, and that's what we got.
Yeah, but credit the offensive line. With all the injuries that this team has had, that offensive line has been pretty healthy all year long. I think if you look at total games missed, maybe it's the 6 that Cosme missed at the beginning of the year because he was still coming off the ACL surgery that he had after the playoff game in Detroit last year. But other than that, they've had healthy bodies out there every week. And I don't think they get enough credit for what they've done because so many of the players have been injured, including the quarterback 3 times. I don't think that they should share any of the blame for that. I don't think that was the case. Maybe the hamstring injury was the result of an injury that happened in the pocket. All that talk about, hey, you got to keep Jaden Daniels from running. The injury that he suffered, the last one, the dislocated elbow, that was because he was foolishly trying to run at a point where he just needed to hand off and end the game. I don't know if you blame that on the offensive line. So give them credit against one of the best pass rush in the league, and keeping Marcus Mariota upright to play a really good game. He had a really stupid interception early on, which only resulted in 3 points, but overall he had the time he needed to throw. And then this angle, and this is always a fun angle to look at in the NFL. 2 years ago, Broncos had Russell Wilson. Broncos stunk. Sean Payton didn't sign him. He inherited him. He did what he could with him, and then he moved on. And he took a rookie quarterback that was, questionable. I don't think coming out of that draft that many teams were excited about Bo Nix. But Bo Nix has become spectacular for him. And now he's put together the best record in the NFL. They won 9 straight games. And this is the point that you reach only 2 years after having a team that stunk. 2 years later, you have a team that when they win, people say, well, it was a 3-9 team, and you had to go to overtime to beat them, and it came down to the last play. What's the deal?
Pick a Super Bowl team, and I say that respectfully, and then go look at that season. I mean, look at it honestly. And I can go back through, the 6 or 7 playoff teams or real good teams. You begin to build some momentum. Yeah, there's some things you want to clean up, but just take a peek at any one of them. And every once in a while you get one of those teams that just rolls right through it all. But this is a tough league.
Yeah, that's what happens on your way to a great season. I don't know if the Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl, but they're going to be in the mix, and they may have the first round bye with the best record in the AFC. And if you want to go back to 1991, I know it's ancient history, but the Redskins were playing at home against a not very good Houston Oilers team, and Brian Mitchell muffed a punt late in the game, like 40 seconds to go when they were up, I think by 2 points or something like that. And Houston set up to kick a very short field goal. Ian Howfield, in what would turn out to be his last kick in the NFL. His father had been a longtime kicker with the New York Jets, but Ian Howfield lined up to make a kick that would win the game, that would stop the Redskins' undefeated season. They had won, 7 or 8 in a row at that point. And he missed. It was a short kick, and he missed. Any other field goal kicker, there were, I think, 30 teams in the league at that time. Any other field goal kicker would have made that. Of the other 29, 28 would have made it. But he missed, and they survived, and they continued to win until they lost a game Thanksgiving weekend to Dallas, and then they lost the season finale to the Eagles when Gibbs was resting all the starters, and then they blitzed their way to the Super Bowl. So, Denver could still be good, and they found a way to win. Doesn't matter how they won the game. So let's not jump all over Sean Payton for having a close game against a 3-9 team. Happens. That's the league. All right, coming up, Lane Kiffin. Who do you blame? Where does the blame game go? And Pat Forty takes a look at all the blame. Who should have it? Who's skating? There's the sliminess of the way college sports work these days. He lays it out beautifully. We'll get to that. Plus, Marty Smith's exclusive interview with Lane Kiffin as he was about to board the plane to Baton Rouge. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We're going to spend a lot more time on last night's Commanders' loss to the Broncos. I did not get to the officiating before the break. Just some calls at the end of the game, which are just baffling. None of them cost them the game. but there was a false start on Terry McLaurin, which looked ridiculous. He was set. He's a pro. I would think that with all he's done in the league, he would get the benefit of the doubt if it was close. And to me, it didn't even look close. You have to be set for a second. He was clearly set for a second on that. They called a false start on him. And then they're down 3 late in the fourth quarter. Officials missed a trip on Denver's Dondre Tillman, which resulted in a sack of Marcus Mariota and led them to punt. And then on an 18-play drive that ended with Jake Moody's field goal as time expires, NBC rules analyst and former official Terry McCauley said said an intentional grounding penalty on Mariota that forced the Commanders to convert 3rd and 25 shouldn't have been called. Right. I mean, he threw the ball in that direction. He was in the tackle box for sure, but this is a rules expert, saying it. So, I don't know how these calls are missed the way they are. And, maybe we're going to get to the point of where all calls are made from the press box. You have officials on the field that can see holding and things like that. But you got to have an overall look at that, the bird's eye view, to make a call like that, and they missed that, and it's hard to get your head around it. All right, the big unfolding news yesterday as we were watching NFL games was what was going to happen with Lane Kiffin, and it became evident early in the day that he was going to take the LSU job. In fact, this was supposed to be announced Saturday what Lane Kiffin was going to do. Then we heard that Florida realized he wasn't going to take the Florida job, so they moved on. And then it was going to be LSU or stay at Ole Miss. And as things rolled, it was pretty clear he was going to LSU. The question became whether Lane Kiffin would be able to stay on and coach his players through the playoff. And they're not going to be in the SEC title game, even though they only lost 1 game this year. But they are going to be in the playoff when that's announced a week from today, I believe. Yeah, it'll be tomorrow. A week from tomorrow, we'll find out exactly how it's set up. They have all the conference games, or maybe it's next Sunday. Maybe it is. I think they want to do this as quickly as possible. So after all the conference title games on Saturday, we'll know how the playoff sets up, and they'll be in. They're definitely going to be in. And Kiffin wanted to coach his team. And as it went down, there was talk that he was holding them hostage because he said, "Well, if you make me leave, I'm taking my assistants with me." And then it was like a take it or leave it kind of thing, ultimatum for the assistants, whether either you stay or you go now because they're kicking me out. And ultimately he left, and so now Ole Miss moves on. They've moved up the defensive coordinator. They say that this is not an interim move. This is a permanent move. We'll see. But they've lost not the CEO type of coach. It's not Bobby Bowden leaving Florida State when he was in his 70s. This is Lane Kiffin, offensive genius. He's got the headset on. He calls the plays. And now he's out. And you could say, well, isn't that awful here in this day and age? Well, the players can leave whenever they want now anyway. And we've had players who have left teams during the playoff run, like backup quarterbacks who want to get to the next stop in the portal before that closes. They're leaving. We had that with Penn State last year. That's happening now. It's just complete wild, wild west chaos. But Pat Forty lays this out incredibly well. I urge you to read the whole column today at SI.com because he doesn't spare anybody in this, and he spreads the blame all around. First quarter, that's how he writes his column, by quarters. First quarter, shame on everyone. The entire unprecedented episode is a disgraceful yet inevitable byproduct of a broken system and the con men who get rich from it. What if what Kiffin said is true, that he asked to coach the team through the playoffs with support from the players and was told to hit the road, then the leaders of the school put their own pride before their best shot at a national championship. And at Mississippi, the last one of those it could claim before the program recruited black players. Clearly, keeping Kiffin through the playoff would have been a difficult ask for athletic director Keith Carter. LSU is an ancient rival within the same conference, and Ole Miss boosters stepped up big time in recent years to give Kiffin the NIL backing he wanted. To be shunned hurts, but if Kiffin was all in on a championship chase and willing to accept, as he put it, guardrails to protect the program, presumably in terms of taking players with him to LSU, Why not do it? Why not give your 11-1 team, which is likely to host a playoff game, the best possible chance that something would be cherished by the fans forever? Absolutely. And to me, this is how I look at the Steven Strasburg contract extension. Yeah, it was a disaster. They gave him $245 million, and he pitched 33 innings, and he was done. But Steven Strasburg delivered a World Series championship for Washington for the first time in 95 years. And whatever you did to him physically by using him as a starter and a reliever in the playoff run in the World Series, yeah, I mean, it's horrible that his career didn't get to play itself out on the field, but he was handsomely rewarded, and he was the MVP of a World Series championship, which hadn't happened in this town since 1924. So, I think you got to look at the Ole Miss situation the same way. Yeah, I know the coach is leaving, but it's also a situation where you have a chance that you haven't had in years, in 60 years, 60-plus years to do it, and, do it while you can, because he's going to leave one way or another. Why not get out what you can from him? He was willing to do it. He was willing to make LSU wait. No, you're not the coach anymore here. And, some would compare it to what happened with Bill Frieder at Michigan in 1989 when he took the Arizona State job going into the NCAA tournament. And old school Bo Schembechler said, I want a Michigan man coaching Michigan. And he promoted Steve Fisher, who was the assistant coach, to head coach, and they went on to win the national championship. Well, in that case, Bo got to hold his head up high. And in a way, Bill Frieder got screwed, but he screwed himself, and they won a national championship without him. So, you can look at that both ways, but I would look at it from the standpoint of, you got this opportunity that you haven't had in decades at Ole Miss. Take advantage of it. They did. More from Pat Forty. Part of college football's program is the hysteria about preparing for next season, even when it undercuts the current season. If keeping Kiffin would have hurt the Rebels in the transfer market or in high school recruiting for a maximum of 8 weeks, okay. How many fan bases would take a down year or two in exchange for winning a national title or even making the college football playoff quarterfinals or semifinals? Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. He says Kiffin is the team's master offensive strategist. He's not the CEO who delegates. In choosing to remove Kiffin from the playoff mix at this late juncture, this might even alter how the selection committee views Ole Miss. Could it hurt the seeding for a potential home game? We saw what happened to Florida State when they still had 4 teams. They were left out of it, even with an undefeated season, because they lost their quarterback to an injury. And this all plays into the seeding, no question about it. Then he goes on to talk about the instant promotion of defensive coordinator Pete Golding to full-time head coach. Well, he says Golding wasn't on anybody's hot list this year. That's true. All of that said, writes Pat Forty, Kiffin's own not my fault stance is insulting. He clearly shares the blame and further distinguishes himself among the oiliest characters in college football history. Now, that's tough to do, because there have been some really oily characters in college football history. He's among the oiliest? Oy gewalt. That's not good. He's been a sower of discord everywhere, a talented coach whose tenures always end badly, acrimoniously, and awkwardly. The feature stories that populated the internet this fall about how Kiffin has changed because he does yoga and stopped drinking were the kind of puff pieces that access journalism tends to produce, allowing the coach to reinvent himself. You may not get the full meaning of that. Access journalism is important. That's a big key of that. If Lane Kiffin gets chummy with you, you may get some information that you wouldn't get, but you pay back by doing what Forty accurately calls puff pieces about, he does yoga and he doesn't drink alcohol anymore. As it turns out, the spots are still on the leopard. Kiffin's reputation is earned, not invented. Let's not excuse LSU for its all-world hypocrisy of recent weeks. Now, he's laying some of the blame here on LSU. Governor Jeff Landry put on a big performance as an outraged champion of fiscal sanity and decrying the massive buyout for fired coach Brian Kelly, pinning the blame on athletic director Scott Woodward and helping to push him out. Now LSU is throwing an astronomical contract at Kiffin because the Tigers need to get back to winning. By the way, it's about $12 million if you haven't heard. Further down the not my fault list, mega agent Jimmy Sexton. He's a bull in a china shop, routinely strong-arming schools and helping create the cult of the coach that plagues college sports. If you're appalled by the buyouts that leads to tens of $millions in wasted money, Sexton negotiated plenty of them. If you're ticked off at coaches talking to schools during the season and leaving when the games are still being played, he's the intermediary facilitating that. Is Sexton just doing his job? Sure. But it's a hell of a line to walk routinely to disrupt the sport without even bearing any responsibility. And then he lays some of the blame at Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and the entire leadership of college football, though Sankey might as well be the commissioner of college football. The damaging, nonsensical recruiting calendar drives these problems, and everyone in charge continues to shrug at it. Spasms of outrage blow up and then are allowed to die down because nobody really seems to care about football cheapening its postseason. Nowhere in the eat or be eaten justification for every trespass of ethics, professional courtesy, and decorum more prominent than in Sankey's league. And then he concludes the column. This is a great column, by the way, by Pat Forty. Says, for 10 months a year, everyone in the sport preaches teamwork and togetherness. And for the last 2 months of the year, it's every coach for himself. Games are reduced to sideshow status, and with the expanded playoff, the carousel has become an existential threat to how college football crowns a champion. Well done, Pat Forty. This is Marty Smith, and Marty Smith apparently risked his life to get around fire trucks to get to Lane Kiffin as he was about to board the plane from Oxford, Mississippi to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to coach LSU, where I'm sure there'll be a wild press conference today with everybody go, oh, Lane, we love you, we love you, we love you. And in the meantime, they not only said, get out, Lane, they took his clothing rack from his office and put it out on the street and took a picture of it for everybody to see. So this was Marty Smith with Lane Kiffin trying to paint this as some kind of altruistic move. He even, and listen closely in here, because he talks about his father who moved from place to place. His father was mostly a defensive coordinator both in the NFL and in college football. He had a brief stint as a head coach, but he moved from place to place 17 times. And Lane Kiffin actually has the chutzpah to say that he's trying to do good all over the country by moving from school to school as his dad did and impacting a number of people in a number of different places. Buy it if you want. Marty Smith with his exclusive with Lane Kiffin on why he has left Oxford to go to Baton Rouge.
You know that this was a very challenging, difficult day. You know, we went through a lot last night with Keith Carter trying to figure out a way, you know, to make this playoff, you know, run work and be able to coach the team. And at the end of the day, that's his decision. And I totally respect that. I understand that decision. And, you know, so I just totally wish the team the best of luck, wish that I was coaching, but understand that it was a very challenging position for him and the chancellor to be in, and totally respect that. So, you know, just really hope they play really well and go win the national championship.
What drew this decision out so long?
Just, it was really difficult. This has been a really special place. 6 years here. I know that there's a lot of feelings and emotions right now around. I hope when they settle down that there's an appreciation about what we were able to do here and having, you know, the best run that's ever been done in the history of the school, and brought some exciting times. So I'm so appreciative to the people of Oxford and the relationships that I developed here. And you know, when I spoke at my dad's funeral, he moved 17 times. And I realized when all the people, I got all the letters, calls, people showed up from around all those different spots, NC State, all the different spots he coached. And they said he was able to impact them and how much that meant to them. And so I've really strived since that day to really try to impact people and help people through life, through my journey. So just prayed a lot and made a family decision and, you know, hopefully get a chance to go, you know, impact a whole new set of people.
I understand you didn't attend the meeting today. Why not?
You know, again, I totally respect Keith's decision.
So that was his decision?
Yeah. He asked me not to come to the meeting and said I couldn't come, but which I totally understand. You know, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. You know, we're trying to find a way, you know, to make this work and coach the team and give the team the best chance to win. But I also, you know, he's got a job to do, and like he said, he has to live here. So like you said, maybe all the national people understand why he should let me coach, but he has to live here, and it's a little different when you're the AD. So totally respect that. And Keith has been amazing to us over the 6 years.
Why was LSU the right choice for you?
Yeah, just there was something in me. This was really hard. My heart was here, but I just I talked to some mentors, Coach Carroll, Coach Saban, and especially when Coach Carroll said, "Man, your dad would tell you to go, man. Take the shot. Take the shot. You've accomplished a lot here." I always hated how we only gave 1 year to Tennessee and left. I really hated that feeling of that, even though it was an exciting year. But, I think that we gave a lot to this program and to the city, and, some of the most historic wins in this stadium that we've ever had, and best regular season in the history of the school. So I feel proud of that part. But it just became time, I talked to God and he told me it's time to take a new step. It's a new chapter.
Some people will look at this and say, okay, it is the best season in the history of the school, the best era in the history of the program, a playoff team with an opportunity to win a national championship. So what does LSU offer in your mind that Ole Miss doesn't?
I don't know all that. It just was something that I prayed on and made a family decision. And maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But I think a lot of times, you just go prove things right. And that's what we're going to do when we get there.
Last thing. I know this has been an emotional time for you. What are the specific emotions that you'll be watching your team on television playing in the college football playoff?
I don't know that. There's so many emotions today, and it was so rushed. This isn't a normal job, and so I'm not complaining about the job. This is a very abnormal job that you don't get a chance to just go places, look around, make decisions, maybe start in 4 months or something when you relocate. So this is one of those strange jobs that you got to get on a plane and go. So I hate that part of it, and but it is what it is.
One last thing that I meant to ask a moment ago. What role did your desire to bring some offensive staff with you or some staff members with you play in the decision-taking moment?
In decision of what?
In the decision to be finalized.
Oh. Yeah, there was no, I guess there's a narrative, because I had to talk to the players about that someone pumped a narrative in them that there was an ultimatum to coaches or something like that they had to go. There was nothing. Every coach has their own decision to make, and I would never give them ultimatums like that. And so, those are all their own individual decisions.
That's Lane Kiffin with Marty Smith. There's kind of an implied ultimatum when you say, well, I'm getting on that plane, going to Baton Rouge, who's coming with me? And it is their own decision. I don't think it was stated. Maybe it was, but I don't. And he's denying it. But he's not saying, "Well, if you don't go with me now, I'm never going to take you." Who knows? But if you go work for Lane Kiffin, it could be not for long. Like the old Jerry Glanville line, because look at how he moves around. And he says, "Oh, I hated leaving Tennessee after a year." Yeah, you hated it so much that you went to sunny California to work for USC, presumably for more money. And what comes around goes round, because you didn't even get it on the bus with the team after it landed at the airport. They fired you in a little hangar and said, "You're done, and we're moving on." So that's when he had to, resuscitate himself and go work for Nick Saban, and then get his opportunity at Florida Atlantic, which led to this opportunity here, which he's now walking away from. So, and look, I understand that people are religious. I get that. And they use their faith to make decisions. But God doesn't make all these decisions. I remember the first year of free agency was 1993 in the NFL, and the biggest free agent was Reggie White, whose contract was up with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Reggie had been a part of the court case which led to the players getting free agency. And God love Reggie. He was a great player, great player, and a very, very religious man. But they asked him why he went to Green Bay, and he said, "Well, God told me to go to Green Bay." Well, coincidentally, the Packers offered the most money. and that was really what it came down to. And they understood at the start of free agency, where they're having trouble, attracting players to go to Green Bay. If you're getting the best defensive player in the league at that time to your team, it's kind of helpful. And if you offer the most money, that's going to play a pretty big factor. Now, I'm sure God understood with Reggie that it would be best for him and his family to have the most money, but not all decisions are because God said do it. A lot of times it has to do with, in this case, more money, which would have been matched by Ole Miss, but LSU, I mean, it's a fact. It's a better chance to win a national championship. And what has been said for quite some time was, well, gee, if old Ed Orgeron could win a championship there, then anybody can win a championship. And what we saw with 4 years of Brian Kelly is no, not everybody can win a national championship. Maybe Lane Kiffin can, and maybe he'll always be hated at Ole Miss, but right now they can't love him more at LSU as the coaching go-round goes on in college football. All right, coming up, Tom Pelissero, who covers the NFL for the NFL Network, was on with Rich Eisen last week. And, you know, as things evolve here in Washington, now they're going through a tough season, but the train wreck that we watch for the 24 years of Dan Snyder and all the crazy things like the bingo caller, Sherm Lewis, maybe Smith. I think it was Sherm Lewis being called in to call plays, and Jim Zorn being stripped of his play calling duties, and on and on and on with Steve Spurrier and all the crazy things that happened. It's nice to drive by a car wreck on the side of the road and say, thank God that wasn't us. Wait till you hear the story of what happened to Chip Kelly with the Raiders. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Such is life in the NFL. A wide receiver who was on the practice squad a month ago made what may be the catch of the year in the NFL, and we'll go into the further meaning of the Treylon Burks catch last night and the loss to Denver in the next hour. Meantime, we got Tom Brady running the Raiders, and looks to me so far, now it could change, but it looks to me like what happened with Michael Jordan here over 20 years ago. And nobody was more excited about Michael Jordan running the Wizards than Michael Wilbon and others who had covered Jordan during his prime. They were enthralled with Jordan. Some of them were good friends with him, like Wilbon continues to be. But it was, a basketball genius is coming here to rescue the Wizards. He knows everything about the NBA, and he's going to make all the right decisions and bring in all the right people. And he hired Leonard Hamilton, who had never coached in the NBA before, coached in college, successful coach. And they won 19 games. He fired Leonard Hamilton after a year. Jordan came back and played a couple of years, wanted to come back and run the team again. And Abe Pollin, then in his 70s, said, no, get the hell out. It didn't work out. And Jordan, although he became an owner later, didn't have success as an owner either in Charlotte, did he? He made a lot of money. He's been very good at that. And he's a great businessman, billionaire. His Air Jordan line at Nike is printing money. But as an executive, he stunk. He stunk here. And anybody else want to hire him as an executive after he left here? No, nobody wanted him. So Tom Brady, great player, winningest player of all time, 7 Super Bowl rings, now part owner of the Raiders and essentially running the team. I don't know what Mark Davis does, but a lot of the football decisions are made by Tom Brady. Well, now he's got a Ulta-Cocker coach, 73-year-old Pete Carroll, who's already fired the special teams coach and the offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. And this is Tom Pelissero talking to Rich Eisen about how this all unfolded with Tom Brady calling the shots and how they wound up with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly for a team that now looks to be, if not the worst in the NFL, one of the worst.
It had become apparent by the end of last season that Tom Brady's number one choice was Ben Johnson. That was the coach that he wanted. He had talked about him at times in certain ways, and people read into his comments on the broadcast. He had certainly spoken with him before games and things like that. Tom Brady is maybe not just the greatest, but the smartest quarterback to ever play the game. And the things that he saw Ben Johnson do were so next level in Detroit. That was the guy he wanted. And there was a bet of sorts made by the Raiders that it's Tom Brady. Who's going to say no to Tom Brady? So Tom was directly recruiting Ben Johnson and trying to convince him to come. The Raiders, I was told at the time, had a massive offer out to Ben Johnson. They wanted him to come in the building and go through a second interview, but it was pretty apparent if Ben wanted the job, it was Ben's job. Well, one day after the Lions season ends, he's on a plane to Chicago and he is taking the Bears job without even having to do an in-person interview. His performance against the Bears had kind of been his interview for a couple of years, but the Bears also made him a really strong offer. And I got the sense even at the time that there was no clear plan B. Not that they didn't have different thoughts in mind about who they might want to interview, but they interviewed, variety of coaches from different backgrounds. They interviewed, Robert Saleh was somebody who had interviewed with them. They interviewed some other younger coaches. They interviewed some older coaches. Pete Carroll, philosophically, schematically, age, personality, has virtually nothing in common with Ben Johnson. And the point I'm making is not only did you pivot in terms of the coach you hired, you completely pivoted in the way that you were trying to build it. From Ben Johnson, offensive guru, he's 39 years old or whatever, long-term answer, to Pete Carroll, defensive coach in his 70s, was out last year, just wants to run the football, throw it when he needs to, and win with defense. It was totally different. Chip Kelly seemed like he was the bridge between the two, which was Chip had been regarded at his peak, going back to Oregon and early on in Philadelphia, as being somebody who was really, really smart with offense. But what you saw was once Chip didn't have the players who were better than everyone else, he had Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy early in Philly. He made the choices to get rid of them. All of a sudden, the Eagles' offense wasn't the same. He goes to San Francisco. That offense was not the same. He's out of the NFL. He goes back to college. Ohio State, what's the common denominator? Better athletes than everybody else had. I was at the week 1 game. The Raiders beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
But that might be the weirdest result of the entire NFL schedule.
No doubt.
When you rewind, it was kind of bumpy that day, but they made some plays. And it just seemed like from week 2 on, teams just kind of caught up with what the Raiders were doing. And there are all kinds of different stories, Rich, about just the dysfunction of the Raiders offense. There were times I was told where Chip Kelly was repeatedly botching the play calls, where he's supposed to be, for instance, tagging a motion on a play so the receiver's on the left, not the right. He forgets to say it, so Geno Smith is going to the line of scrimmage and going, this doesn't look right, and they're trying to run a play. It happened on a 3rd down in the game the other day. There's times where Chip, I was told on several occasions, called a play that was either not in the game plan or not installed at all. Things like that happen. You're not productive. That's enough. You didn't need any extra excuses.
Damn.
But there were a lot of things that were popping up within games that were just not anything that a good team can overcome. They didn't have enough talent. There's no doubt about it. Maybe my favorite stat of the entire season is there were only 3 players on the Raiders offense who were making more money than Chip Kelly. It was Geno Smith, Colton Miller, and Ashton Genty was making like 6.1. Chip was making $6 million a year. I can't think of another team that has a setup like that. It was always going to be a challenge for them offensively, but Chip's scheme was supposed to elevate it. And what you saw on the field made pretty obvious. There was kind of a level of chaos to it that just made it really, really hard for them to function.
That's Tom Pelissero, NFL Network. So let's recap here. Tom Brady wants to hire Ben Johnson, the young passing game genius. Doesn't get Ben. Ben goes to work for the Chicago Bears. He then hires a 73-year-old coach, not a 39-year-old coach, a 73-year-old coach who likes to run the ball. And then to counter that, he goes, well, got to have somebody who can give us a passing game. So let's get Chip Kelly. Pays Chip Kelly $6 million a year, which is, I believe, more than what Dan Quinn makes. Chip Kelly not only doesn't properly call plays, not putting in the right formation, but he's calling plays that aren't even in the game plan. What a disaster. And Brady has to wear it. And all that controversy of, he's going to get inside information on these Zoom calls talking to coaches. He shouldn't be allowed to talk to players. Doesn't matter. This guy, as a general manager or whatever his role is with the Raiders as a part owner, is simply a great quarterback. He's nothing else. It's like Michael Jordan. Jordan, the greatest basketball player I've ever seen, and I think many would make the case he's the best that ever played the game. He was terrible running the game as an executive. And it's probably the same thing with Tom Brady. And look at who he hired. What a disaster. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pete Carroll is one and done there and they move on, and I wouldn't let Tom Brady do the hiring, but Tom Brady's part owner. So maybe, as they say, you can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Wow, what a mess. We'll get to the catch last night in the Commanders game and also what Aaron Rodgers said about his receivers, throwing them under the bus. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Mike Tirico huffed and he puffed, but he couldn't blow Chris Collinsworth down with the Treylon Burks reception last night in the Commanders' loss to the Broncos. Wanted to put it in the same neighborhood as Odell Beckham's catch on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys when he was playing with the Giants, but he couldn't quite get it there. But it was one hell of a catch. And Barry Zerluga wrote an entire column around it. Now, we'll get to what he wrote. It's a player who's symbolic of where they have to go right now and what's left of the season. And what's left of the season is somewhat interesting because they're going on the road to play Minnesota this week. It's right now favorites. And it has to do with the state of quarterbacking in the NFL. And if you didn't see this yesterday, I was watching this on the Red Zone channel with nothing to do all day but wait around for Sunday night. I was watching Red Zone most of the day, and the Minnesota Vikings went to Seattle and played. And J.J. McCarthy, still in concussion protocol, was not in uniform yesterday. We'll find out more information today, whether he's past it and be ready to play against the Commanders on Sunday. But he's no great shakes either. He's having a rough time of it. Didn't play at all last year because of a knee injury. He's made 6 starts this year. He's 2-4. His completion percentage is 54%, which stinks. He's thrown 6 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, and in just 6 games, he has been sacked 20 times. They already went through Carson Wentz. He got hurt, so he's out. So they were forced to start yesterday Max Brosmer. Max Brosmer had played like what they used to call, 1AA football at New Hampshire. What James Madison used to be in, now they've moved up. But that's when they have a different level of play. I believe they call it FCS. So he played 5 years there, including the COVID year. He had a knee injury. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. He starts at the University of Minnesota, and he has what they call a training camp arm. He was available. He worked at the same practice facility as the Vikings did. Okay, let's bring him to camp. Well, they blow through all these quarterbacks, expecting J.J. McCarthy to be their guy all year. And now with McCarthy out, and you got Carson Wentz gone for the season with shoulder surgery, then you got to start Max Brosmer. And he was horrifically bad. Horrible. His passing yardage, not outlandishly bad, 126 yards. But he threw 4 interceptions, and he was sacked 4 times. And on one of the interceptions, the defender had his left arm and was trying to bring him down, and rather than going down when they were in field goal range, he tries to make a hero play, tossing the ball away. It's get picked off by a Seattle defensive back, takes it back for a pick 6. Just a complete disaster. And it reminded me of a story that you may have heard me tell from many, many years ago. Randy Johnson, played in the NFL for about 13, 14 years, was actually a quarterback here with Washington and played ahead of Joe Theismann for a year. 1975, he was the backup to Billy Kilmer. Kilmer got hurt, and it was Randy Johnson that started, not Joe Theismann. And anyway, by 1980, I think it was 80 or 81, I'm working in San Antonio and broadcasting the San Antonio Charros, which was a minor league football team. They paid the players about $50, and we'd go on a road trip in a bus, and they'd bring out a few cases of beer and boxes of chicken, and that's how we rode home. It was true minor league football, but Randy Johnson, for whatever reason, wanted to play. So he was the quarterback, and we went on a trip to, I think we took a plane trip for this. We went and played in Charlottesville, West Virginia. And so Randy was the starting quarterback, but they needed a backup because Glenn Pena, who was the backup, couldn't go because he had to work at the gas station. And, just couldn't give up his night's work. So they signed the general manager, rest his soul, Roger Gill, who played in the NFL, signed a high school kid who was trying to get a college scholarship. He'd been a high school quarterback. And because if he took money as a professional, wasn't much, but $50 is $50, he would lose his college eligibility. So they gave him Glenn Pena's jersey, number 7, I remember, and they said that that this kid's name was Glenn Pena. So what do you know? Randy Johnson gets hurt. The kid, and I don't remember his name, but we called him Glenn Pena on the radio broadcast, was horrifically bad. And poor old Glenn Pena was sitting in the gas station listening to me call the game and saying, oh, man, Pena really looks bad tonight. Pena's having a terrible game. And it looked that bad yesterday for Max Brosmer. So if Washington has to face him or gets to face him on Sunday, that's going to be a good thing because he's clearly not ready to play in the NFL. And even if J.J. McCarthy starts, there's no real guarantee that he's going to look a whole lot better because he hasn't so far, and they're already talking about him being in Bussville. But that is the circumstance as they go to Minnesota for a 1:00 game on Sunday. How about all these primetime games? 0-5 this year. Not going to miss these night games, that's for sure. Anyway, Marcus Mariota, who came up a play short of pulling off the upset, the 2-point conversion pass, which would have won the game to a wide open receiver, was knocked away, and that is how this disappointing game came to an end. Okay, we're having some technical issues here. Let's try this again. Here's Marcus Mariota on the end.
Our guys just competed. That's why I love this locker room. And I'll go out there with those guys any day of the week. And made big plays at the end. The DC Vance was doing a good job of just mixing up zero and showing zero and dropping out. I felt like on the touchdown to Terry that they were going to drop out, that I could try to hit it before the plug defender inside. And Terry did a good job of winning at the line of scrimmage. And then the 2-point, he brought zero. I knew I had to try to get some depth and give our guy a chance. He made a play on it, and that's just the way it goes.
That's the way the ball bounces, and Washington loses the game by 1. But in this game, there is a highlight that may be the highlight catch of the year, and it happened when Washington was still very much in it in the first half, and Mike Tirico during the game. I think most people, when they saw it, thought of the Odell Beckham one-handed catch on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys and how incredible that was. And that was, I think, 11 years ago. And Collinsworth wouldn't quite go there. Nah, not quite as good. And then Tirico finally had to say, well, you're the great wide receiver, which I think may be a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Not that he was bad. He played on 2 Super Bowl teams. But Chris Collinsworth, if he goes to the Hall of Fame, is going by bus. But anyway, that was the catch, and this was the reaction that Burks had afterwards.
Is that the best in-game catch you've ever made?
In-game?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a tie with. I had one against Georgia, so I don't know. It was a good catch, though.
Yeah, it was a good catch. And as Barry points out, Barry Zerluga, in his column, this is a guy who's had one of these incredible journeys that you have in the NFL. He says the careers of professional athletes rarely play out in straight lines. Burks' career arc, if displayed on a chart, would read like someone with heart palpitations. A 3-year starter who became an all-SEC receiver at Arkansas, Burks was regarded highly enough that the Tennessee Titans traded away star receiver A.J. Brown to Philadelphia to obtain the 18th pick in the 2022 draft, which they used to take Burks. So they essentially traded. Well, they were going to have to pay him. That's probably added to it. But traded A.J. Brown. Look at what he's done for the Philadelphia Eagles. Traded him for the 18th pick, which became Burks. Suffered a turf toe injury, endured a concussion, tore ligaments in his knee. Never played more than 11 games in any of his first 3 years. And during training camp this year, he made a spectacular catch, one-handed, and broke his collarbone. So when he got healthy in October, Titans waived him. Commanders signed him 10 days later. And it was not to the active roster. It was to the practice squad. And finally, when Luke McCaffrey went down for the year with an injury, Burks was elevated to the regular roster in a blowout loss against Detroit. He flashed, catching 3 balls, including a 37-yarder. He also broke the middle finger on his right hand. We'll get to that, what Dan Quinn says about that. But that's the guy who made the catch. This is the reaction from Marcus Mariota.
One-on-one, really, to be completely honest with you. He's showed up in practice doing stuff like that and wanted to give our guy an opportunity, and he made an unbelievable play.
Dan Quinn is the guy who loves these kind of players. And so Dan Quinn was these are the these are the guys that he holds up in the locker room. I know he was a first-round pick, but he was a guy who was on the street. And these are the guys that he holds up, and he says, okay, this is who we are. We stay in the fight. And this was Dan Quinn with a lovingly look at his receiver, Treylon Burks, who made the catch.
His hunger index is high. Like, this is a guy who's wanting to prove it. And there's always a space for that type of competitor here. Coming in, man, like, this was a fresh space, and to see him express how important it is, how hard he wants to go compete, like, it's been cool to see. Everybody's got a journey, and sometimes they start one way and doesn't have to, stay that way. And coming here, I felt nothing but intensity from him to go, and then even with his finger, okay, is it going to be out longer? Nope. And so you saw the stitches when you come out, I think there's no way this guy's playing next week. And then all of a sudden he's got a big splint on it. Yeah, I'm good, I'm playing. And so I like that because it shows this is important, man. Like, he wants to be able to do that. And I just think there's always a space for that type of competitor here. So I feel that from him. And I didn't honestly get a chance to see the catch yet, but he made one in practice the other day. Man, he came out of the ground to go catch it. He must have been, 3 feet in the air on a 2-minute drill against the D. So I'm not surprised, but I feel his size and his length. This is a big, strong competitor. When you're standing next to him, you can feel, man, this is a big dude.
Yeah, he is big. He's 6'2", 225 pounds, which is clearly what Tennessee fell in love with when he played in Arkansas, and willing to make the move to get him. But the hyperbole on the jump is great. You heard Dan Quinn say 3 feet. Terry McLaurin said, probably 10 or 12 feet up in the air on the run. Yeah. Then that's son of flubber. That's son of flubber material if you're talking about that. But obviously he can make those spectacular catches. And, this is the point that Barry makes is, okay, this is a guy. You may have found him for next year. He's going to be playing the rest of the year because of the injuries, even when Noah Brown comes back next week, they hope. And if they have Noah Brown, they'll have their top 4 receivers for the first time all season. Well, I guess McCaffrey would have been the 4, but the top 3 with Deebo Samuel and McLaurin, and now you have Noah Brown back, but now you'd also have this guy who's big and can make spectacular catches, and that's important. Speaking of big, I want to mention this before I get to more on the Commanders. I saw this story, and you just look at the headline, and you go, what are you talking about here? Titans running back Julius Chestnut said Jacksonville punter Logan Cook said he was going to kill him during Sunday's game. Chestnut blocked Cook as the punter got the leg up to trip Titans receiver Chimere Dike at the end of a 47-yard return with 14 minutes left. Cook was hurt and evaluated for a concussion before returning to punt at the end of the next series. Jaguars went on to win the game 25-3, and the two teams combined for 23 accepted penalties for 184 yards. So there was a lot of chippiness going on there. Chestnut said he never got an explanation as to why Cook was so mad at him and why he came at me. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the punter has threatened a running back who's 5'11" and a very muscular 228 pounds. What are we talking about here? The punter of my youth, Mike Bragg, and I looked this up, Mike Bragg was listed at 5'11", 186 pounds. He was, a couple inches taller than me and 10 pounds heavier. That's the punter that I grew up watching. So I'm like, the punter threatened him, and this becomes a story? Well, turns out that Cook, the punter, is 6'5", 230 pounds. Who knew they make the punters this big? 6'5", 230. Tress Way is bigger than I thought. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. So punters are getting bigger, but punter threatening a running back to kill him? Wow. That's interesting stuff. But fortunately, nothing became of that. But that was involved in what turned out to be one of the more ugly games from yesterday. As for where they are now as a football team, we kind of take stock of the Commanders every week, and now we've gone 7 straight weeks or 7 straight games with losses. What is there to play for at this point? This is Dan Quinn on what he liked about this game and what it means going forward.
I was pleased with, for the most part, in the run game. I thought this has been a team that's been able to get down the edge. That's been one of the things that we haven't done as well, so I wanted to make sure we could do that. So that part felt good. It was good to get the takeaway from Wags. I thought that was one to create momentum and go, and we'll need to continue to work that part. But there was progress. I think that's made certainly in the run game, and we got plenty of room to grow into that. But having Will Harris back, that was a big deal for us. This guy's tough. He's a great communicator. So I really felt the energy and the toughness of the guy.
Yeah, they did run the ball 143 yards, although Mariota was the leading ground gainer with 55 of those yards. As for what he sees in these last 5 games,
we're going in the right direction. It's not exactly where we want to be, but I think putting together a great week of practice, I think we just continue to stack these. And regardless of what it looks like for us, it's all about the process and the journey. And the more that we can find ways to improve week to week, I think that sets a solid foundation for what's to come.
Okay. A couple things on coaching. One, it may not be a name that you're that familiar with, but if you look at the development of Jaden Daniels, he gets a lot of credit. And his name is Tavita Pritchard. Odd name. First came to light for me. It's going back a while, maybe as much as 15 years or longer than that. He was the quarterback briefly at Stanford before Andrew Luck came in as a true freshman and took his job. But he played in a very pivotal game in the Jim Harbaugh era there. They played USC. USC was top 3 in the country, and Stanford had been horrendous. And Tavita Pritchard beat USC, Pete Carroll's mighty USC team, and became a legend in that part of the country. He's since gone through the coaching ranks. He sort of was a coach, kind of a player coach, the year that Andrew Luck started his first year at Stanford. And now he's going to be the new head coach there. Here's Quinn.
Tavita has been a great teammate for us, and I say that in the highest regard. That's one of the highest compliments that you can give a ball player or a coach, what they mean to the staff and, the development for him. So for him being at Stanford for so long as a, ball player there, a GA, a coach, so pretty cool op for him that he's connected with Andrew. So we're all pumped for him. It's a fantastic opportunity for him. So, we're bummed personally, but, man, we're very excited. I just think they got a great things ahead there.
Yeah, Tavita Pritchard once backed up Andrew Luck. Now he works for him as the head coach, as Luck is the general manager at Stanford. A lot of people thought he was going to take the job, become the head coach, but he hired his former backup quarterback, and we'll see when he gets this opportunity. Meantime, Bill Belichick has finished up his first season at North Carolina at 4-8. Not good, but I guess not as bad as it could have been as it looked at points of the season, including the opener where they got their doors blown off by TCU. But he has denied that he is looking for an NFL job, though Tom Pelissero, who covers the NFL for the NFL Network, says this.
Bill Belichick, I keep saying it, and he can have somebody post statements for him on Instagram about
just say Lombardi's
not
name
pursuing
by
NFL
name.
jobs.
Just call Mike by name. Just call Mike by his name. It's okay. Go for it.
I don't know if it was Mike.
Okay.
There were some typos in the statement.
Okay.
Bill would absolutely be
Tom.
interested.
Yes.
He would absolutely listen in certain spots, but somebody's got to be willing to do it. And I know that I've said this before. I said it on game day morning. I'll repeat it again. If Bill takes a job, it's not going to be. You're not going to hear the second week of January, Bill's doing a first interview and Bill's going to be a finalist.
Yeah, none of that
it will
anymore.
Just be
yeah.
The whole process will take place. He's not going to get wrapped into it like Atlanta.
Yeah.
Someone will run an entire process. They'll get to the end. They'll go, we don't know who to hire. And then an owner will go, let's just go get Belichick. And one day, hopefully I'll be the one that's reporting Bill's on a plane to City X, and he's going to take the job. That's what it's going to be. Dark of night, in the shadows. Until then, it'll be deny. But is Bill Belichick still open to coming back to the NFL? I would tell you, based on everything I know, absolutely.
Well, okay. But I think, given what's unfolded with the girlfriend in the 2 years that he's been out, the 1 year doing television and then this year coaching, I can't imagine that anybody would bring in that mess for a guy who's 73 years old. I mean, just don't see it. If anybody does, I would bet the house that it'll be a disaster. At this point in his life, with what he would demand and control and all the other stuff that goes along with him, including the crazy girlfriend, I just don't see it. If he winds up with an NFL job, I'll be shocked. Be absolutely shocked. And they're really, well, could he go? If Pete Carroll is one and done, could Tom Brady do the craziest thing ever and hire Bill Belichick as his coach? You know, it's nuts. It's Vegas. It could happen. It's that crazy. All right, that's it for me. Bram Weinstein is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.